So a few people joining us right now. Welcome. This is the third of three East Gloucester Veterans Memorial School Building Project public forums. We're only about 5 people in right now, all of whom, so we'll just see how it goes here in terms of folks entering and joining us. It may be, we're seeing this is the third one. The first one had about 20 people. The second one had about 40 people. So far, we're at a total of 3. Right, 6. Well, now 6. That's right, 6 total. All right. Well, we'll go through the presentation. I'll wait a couple more minutes to see if folks. So far, everyone who's on has It looks like you can raise your hand. Can you raise your hand? There's a raise hand function there. Could folks raise your hand if you've already been on one of the forums? If you can see the raise hand function, just raise the hand there. Use the raise hand function to let us know if you've been on it. I recognize pretty much every name, so maybe people can't find the raise hand function. Okay. Well, the only folks who joined us so far are folks who've already been on. But if you don't mind bearing with the presentation, we'll do it again. And then see if other folks have joined us at that point, once the presentation is over with. And if there are, we'll have some Q&A. So I'll share my screen. I will bring up the presentation. All right, so here we go. Matt, you can see that presentation? All right, thank you. So we got this is, like I said, the third of 3 public community forums to help folks learn about the East Gloucester Veterans Memorial Building Project in advance of question 3. So folks have information about the project. Oops. Really 4 sections of the presentation. So the long-term facilities planning for the Gloucester Public Schools that's been underway since West Parish was rebuilt. We'll have 2 sections about why now. One of those is part 1, the shape that these 2 schools are in now. Actually, shape of all of our schools, honestly, it's all related. Another why now is the costs and how come, and to show folks both what it costs now and what it could cost if we don't go forward. And then I'll look inside and outside the new school. And after that, like I said, if we have some more folks who haven't already been on these sessions, we'll have some Q&A. We'll talk about, in terms of long-term facilities planning that Gloucester Public Schools has in place right now, the 3-part plan to rebuild all of our elementary schools, and then also just to look back at where we've been. So the 3-part long-term plan is about rebuilding all of our elementary schools. They all were built in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. Sort of in the time period after World War II. So West Parish was originally built in 1949, and then, as folks know, it was the replacement. The new building was completed in 2016. Now we're working on the second part of the 3 parts, and that would be replacing East Gloucester, which was built in 1948, and Veterans, which was built in 1956. That we'll talk more about when this project started, but it started back in 2016, so we've been at it for about 4 years. If that goes according to plan, we'll have a new school for both those school communities in 2023. And then that would allow us to look towards Beeman and Plum Cove and figuring out what to do with those next. And that would take at least 7 and more likely 10 or more years once we move forward with East Gloucester veterans. So it depends on those. So ultimately, in pictures here, we want to move from the shape that East Gloucester veterans, Beeman and Plum Cove are in, towards the shape, the sort of modern school building that West Parish is. and that communities around the North Shore and the Commonwealth have been replacing their old schools with for 20 plus years. So we've been at this project, the East Gloucester Veterans Project, for quite some time. So really, we've been at this for 4 years. That began when we applied to work with the Massachusetts School Building Authority. And then you can see the different phases. So this is a very defined process. It's run by the state in conjunction with cities and towns. And they have certain benchmarks you have to hit and ways you have to work and processes and meetings you have to have and hurdles you have to achieve, and which we've done successfully. And most recently in August, they gave us the green light to go into the design, development, and construction phases. That's all been the work of 60 open and public meetings since the process began. And now we're looking to the next stage, which is securing the funding for the project. And that's where we are now. So now let's turn to the second part of our presentation, which is why now. And one of the primary reasons for building replacing these two schools right now are the shape that they're in. So principals Amy Pasquarello and Matt Fusco will show you some pictures in a moment, which say quite a bit. But some of the reasons are that these two schools at this point, 60, 70 years old, are too small, too old, too outdated. Because of that, they're substandard facilities. And because they're substandard facilities, they're compromising our student learning and the services we can provide our students. Through multiple analyses, we've identified the repair needs are too extensive, and they couldn't be remedied completely. And even if we did remedy those repairs, the school buildings are too small for the students they have and too small for modern education. Then you get into inadequate systems, health and safety issues, the poor working conditions for staff, and the lack of meeting space and teaching space to support our most vulnerable learners in special education, English language education, interventions. So what we'll do now is I'll hand it over to Principal Fusco and Principal Pasquarello, and then they'll show us some pictures here that help show you just why these, how the shape that the schools are in and why they need to be replaced.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Lummis. My name is Matt Fusco. I'm principal at the Veterans Memorial School. I'm wearing my East Gloucester sweatshirt that was kindly given to me by Ms. Pasquarello and her staff, just to show how invested I am, and the whole staff at Veterans is invested in this. I'd like to talk about a typical classroom that are in both buildings. To your left is an East Gloucester classroom. To the right is a Veterans School classroom. As you can see, pretty dark. They do appear to be spacious, but that is mostly because we've cleaned the rooms up, cleaned them out of any extraneous furniture due to COVID, so that we could get spacing between students as much as possible. Like I said, the classrooms are very old. So we've had difficulty with wiring for some of the newest technology. As you can see, they're dark. So that's an issue.
Hello, I'm Amy Pasquarello. I'm the principal of East Gloucester, wearing my veterans sweatshirt in kind given to me by Mr. Fusco and staff. What we're seeing here are intervention spaces. Some of them are very crowded. Some are in the hallway or kind of in the corner of the room. This becomes a problem for multiple reasons. One, fire hazards. Being in the hallway blocks the hallway egress. Also, privacy. Students who receive interventions deserve to have them in a private space where they can stretch their knowledge. And we're unable to provide that in our current buildings.
So we have art, music, and PE, and of course we serve lunch at our schools. But as you can see, neither school has an art room. So if you look at the middle picture, you can see what our art teacher that Amy and I both share has to deal with when she goes to classes. For obvious reasons, it limits the type of programming that she can do with the students. At East Gloucester, they do not have a music room, so the music teacher is also on a cart. And both schools, this is a picture of the veteran school, but both schools have what is called a combined gym and cafeteria. So, which was popular back in the 50s and 40s. However, at the way it works now, it's not very helpful, as the gym gets used for cafeteria duty for a very large chunk of the day. So it really puts the gym off limits for almost half the day. I get the bathroom one. So basically you can see that the bathrooms are old, outdated. At Veterans on the left, at least we have 3 sinks, but it looks like East Gloucester only has 1 sink. So there's, handicapped accessibility issues. The bathrooms are old. We figured out that these 2 bathrooms are used by about 140 students each per day, due to the wings that they are in our buildings. So they get used a lot, and they have been used a lot. So they've kind of reached the end.
So this is pictures of our teachers' workroom. Our teachers are professionals and have worked tirelessly. But when they need to make copies or prepare for their classroom at East Gloucester, they're doing it in the hallway. The 2 pictures on the left and the middle is our workroom divided into 2 separate hallways. And the picture on the right is the workroom at Veterans. It's cramped, there's not enough room to spread out, to prepare. And if you look at the picture on the far left with the copier, the brick where it meets the modulars, a couple weeks ago, it was raining inside the building right by those bricks.
That's a design flaw. That isn't intended, correct?
No, it is not intended. It has been repaired, but it comes back. It's
There you go. It's not a purposeful water feature.
no, it's not meant for calming or anything.
Speaking of water features,
Another water feature, which is for whatever reason this video is not showing, our largest water feature at East Gloucester is the stream that runs through the basement 100% of the year. Even on our driest days, there is a small stream that runs through the basement. On our wet days, it gets much larger. The other pictures down here are of the basement. You can see there's a rock flooring, and it's uneven, it's unsteady. There's asbestos in the basement and a lot of water.
great.
Our systems are also outdated. You can see we still have a fuse box that runs our building as opposed to circuit breakers. The second picture there's water on the floor right by the boilers. This was during one of our driest periods this fall, and that is the minimum amount of water that is in our basement on any given day. You can see the watermark where it does raise up. Our 2 furnaces or boilers are chugging away, but they need to be repaired often. The 2 pictures on the right are from Veterans. Those are the systems there that you also can tell are outdated and need to be upgraded. The picture on the far right, it looks like there's some water damage underneath that box. Is that the fuse box with water damage? I'm
not sure.
I don't know. I'm not electrical, but I wouldn't recommend those 2 combinations.
Great. Thank you, Matt and Amy. So now we're getting to why now, and another part of the why now is what will it cost. So we'll talk about the cost of building a new school, the cost of not building the new school, and then also just remind folks that there is not a no-cost option at this point. Doing nothing will cost the city and our taxpayers quite a bit of money, and likely more than the option that's in front of voters on the 3rd. So here's just the schedule here. As we said, been at this for 4 years now. If the vote on project funding is successful on the 3rd, then we go into design development and construction documents. That'll take into the summer. And then site prep and demolition starts in the summer. and then construction starts a year from now. And then the plan is that have the building complete after 2 years of construction, ready to occupy in summer of 2023, opens for students in September 2023. So that's a pretty typical schedule for a school this size, building this size. We're going to talk about the cost now, and one of the important things to realize is because of the borrowing rates, that this is a time that's pretty much unprecedented in terms of being a good time to borrow money for municipal projects and capital projects. So the total project budget, and this is after the design work has happened over the last 4 years, or starting 4 years ago, and two different estimators basing the costs on the design as it stands. So it's a maximum project budget of $66.7 million. Working with the Mass School Building Authority is very fruitful. And as a result of that, they have allocated or expected to grant the city up to $26.9 million. And that means the city of Gloucester's share is just under $40 million. So very importantly, the state MSBA is promising 40% of the cost of the project. And that blue number there, 26.9, which is the state's share, remember that, please, because it's a very important number, which we'll talk about later. So in addition to the two schools, the school that will serve two school communities, there are additional benefits, additional work that the city is committing to. And that's, first of all, the development of new ball fields at Green Street, the creation of new open space as a result of getting rid of the East Gloucester School. So that's preserving open space that's there now, and then also adding the space from where the building is. And then also another piece of the cost is the swing space, the temporary school space that allows the veteran students to move out of their building so it can be rebuilt. These costs are not part of the vote on November 3rd because they don't raise, they're paid out of the general fund from the city, like the city's other debt service. So this does not add to the costs of the project, or it does not add to the cost of the borrowing, I should say, that needs to happen. So in terms of cost to homeowners, because of the historic and unprecedented borrowing rates, because borrowing rates are so low right now, this also makes it so that the cost for homeowners is as low as it just about possibly could be. So that means 20 cents per year for every $1,000 of home value, of assessed home value. So for instance, if your home is valued at $400,000, that's about $80 per year. That your property tax would go up. If your house is valued at $500,000, it'd be approximately $100 per year. Some folks who keep throwing numbers at me in terms of what that means. I'm not sure if there are any smokers out there, but it sounds like that's about a carton and a half of cigarettes. It's about 2 cups of coffee per month. Someone also told me that, or if I look at my Netflix bill, it's less expensive than the cost of Netflix for a year, or Amazon Prime. So not that it's inconsequential, it's meaningful to people, but because of the rates, it's a good time it's the best possible time to do this, because if we wait, a lot of costs go up, including the cost of the taxpayer. So then the question then is, what happens if Gloucester votes no? And we'll talk about that, because I said before, there's not a no cost option. First and foremost, very likely that we will lose the $26.9 million from the state. We'd have to most likely restart the process with MSBA. We have to work with them on that. There's no guarantee that we would work with them again, because it's a competitive process with other communities in the state. Last time when Gloucester was accepted in the process, we were about 17 out of more than 90, nearly 100 applicants. So it's never a guarantee. And they would also delay the project further, and the delay for delaying the project, for 3, 4, 5, 6 more years beyond what we expect, is likely to escalate the cost, because construction costs always go up. And a project that right now cost $67 million would cost the city $40 million, would escalate to $80 or $90 million, and with no guarantee of state funding. So if there was no state funding at that point, Gloucester and its taxpayers would be on the bill, would have to cover that entire cost, that $80 to $90 million, as opposed to the $40 million that's present, that is up for a vote this, I guess, a week from today. Yeah, a week from today. How about that? Okay. Another example of that is no cost option is because we could go other routes if voters say no on election day. Then there are two other options we could pursue. One is repair only and code upgrade. This is repairing of the major systems and getting each building up to code. It is not adding any space. It is not improving the educational needs. It will not produce buildings that can last long-term or that meet the educational needs of students. Those repairs, just to get the systems working properly and replaced, and get the modulars replaced, and get both buildings up to code would cost $16 million or more per school, so more than $32 million. And still, at some point in the near future, next 5, 10, 15 years, the buildings would still have to be replaced. And at that point, the escalation would be even higher because we'd be waiting even longer. So you're looking at, instead of $40 million today, you're looking at 90 to 100 for replacement plus $32 million to keep the building just operating. That's much more significant costs than what taxpayers would pay today. And then another version is number 2 down here, renovation, but no additions for both schools. So you'd renovate the inside, you'd convert the auditoriums into classes or administration space at East Gloucester. You improve the inside space, add art and music rooms to both schools, but you still would have the same footprint. You still have the same limitations on bathrooms, special education resources, and rooms. You still would have inferior buildings that would not be able to meet the educational needs of students because of the lack of size, lack of space. They'd have some better rooms and better spaces, improved spaces, but still not have sufficient space to serve all of our students. And that would cost nearly $60 million, those works, and would not have any, at this point, very unlikely, or may not have any state funding at all. So that's what happens if we go no. Then also, if Gloucester votes no, there's a long-term impact on the long-term plan. It stops the 3-part plan in its tracks. It further delays any action at Beaman and Plum Cove. We have to continue to keep up, maintain, prop up 4 very old schools. And the longer all this work is put off, the more expensive it gets to taxpayers. So there's financial reasons, there are educational reasons, and there's financial reasons and education reasons to go forward at this point. So that's the information we want to share with folks, to make sure you know just sort of what's where the project is and some of the details of it. I'm going to show now a video that's narrated by Ms. Pasquarello and Mr. Fusco, and we want to show you where the design of the building stands now, both inside and out. You'll notice a number of things. You'll notice that school buildings these days, modern school buildings, when they're built, they have more natural light. That helps. There's more space in them, and they're more energy efficient. Some of those actually go hand in hand. More natural light helps with the energy efficiency in terms of daylighting. And then also, they're dedicated rooms typically for art, music, and a media center. Also for cafeterias and gymnasiums, because we want to utilize those spaces and those buildings maximally for learning and teaching. They also will see in this example, but you'd see in other places, flexible spaces. So the idea that you can combine classes, groups of students can work together, but you also have spaces that can be used for project work, hands-on learning, science, technology, engineering. And the last piece is small group rooms, often attached to classrooms, where you can break out rooms for kids working on projects, kids getting special education support or English language support. But those rooms exist purposefully, they're purpose built. And there are recent examples all over the state. Here are a few. One, of course, is West Parish, built with these concepts in mind. But Beverly, Manchester, Essex, Triton has built some. Newburyport has built some recently, I believe, or building them now. Winthrop, Waltham, Fall River, Cambridge. You can literally see schools that are built like this across the state. These communities have also been working with the MSBA, just like Gloucester is as well. So I will show the video now. Just give me a moment. Share my screen. Amy, you can see that?
Hello, this is Matt Fusco, principal of the Veterans Memorial School.
And this is Amy Pasquarello, principal of the East Gloucester School. And we would like to invite you to come fly with us as we tour the proposed East Gloucester Veterans Memorial School building design.
Picture yourself driving down Webster Street towards Eastern Avenue. This is the front of the building. You will notice that there is a separate entrance for the school buses to alleviate traffic congestion at arrival or dismissal. During the day, there is a large gate that is closed to allow students in grades kindergarten and first grade to utilize the entire area for play. As we move towards the front of the building, you will see the art room with its sail-like roof. The tall glassed-in area is the front lobby, which will provide an abundance of natural light. As we ascend, you will notice the expansive parking area for visitors and staff and the extended drive for dismissal and arrival.
Moving towards the rear of the building, you immediately see the expansive grade 2 to 5 playground, complete with a basketball court, turf field, play structure, and swings. This area will be gated during the school day so that the entire playground can be accessed. Looking at the back of the building, you notice areas on the right and the left in brick that delineate the classroom areas. The glassed-in area in the middle is the extended learning area, a place where students and teachers can collaborate, explore, and learn together.
This is the warm and expansive view of the front lobby and will be visitors to the school's first impression. On your left are the administrative offices, and to your right is the cafeteria. As you can see, the ceilings rise 3 stories, and wooden beams harken us back to Gloucester's nautical roots. There is ample seating for all visitors, as well as unique seating arrangements and designs for students, creating spaces that are welcoming and meant for all members of our community.
Here is the school cafeteria with flexible seating, breakout areas for small groups to eat, and floor-to-ceiling windows providing plenty of natural light. If you look at the ceiling, you will see the unique lighting design, which is made to look like the sun, with its rays radiating outwards.
Located in the center of the academic wing is the extended learning area. There is one located on each floor to be utilized by 2 grades. The extended learning area will provide breakout space for students to work collaboratively with teachers, hold special grade level events, and will provide another space for STEM activities. Each area will have 2 projectors and interactive whiteboards, as well as working sinks. Offices for school staff are located on your left. These areas have 1 full glass wall that will provide a large open field.
Here is an example of one of our general education classrooms. As you can see, it will house the latest technology, have flexible seating options, as well as ample space for storage. Each classroom will have a sink and a folding wall that can open to allow 2 classrooms to collaborate with each other.
Located within each classroom is the small group room. This room will allow for smaller groups of students to meet with their teachers for one-to-one interventions, remedial work, or project work. Each room will have a window out to the classroom so that students can stay connected to the work going on in the general classroom as well.
The Media Center is going to be the hub of activity as students find themselves in a large, comfortable area with flexible, comfortable seating, opportunities for STEM activities, and a direct connection from the Media Center to the art room.
For the first time, students that attend the East Gloucester School and the Veterans Memorial School will have access to their very own art room. This beautiful glassed-in area sits at the front of the building and houses a kiln, the latest technology, and it has direct access to the Media Center, which will serve as a transition area for STEM work and project-based learning.
The music room has direct access to the large stage located within the gymnasium. The room will have enhanced acoustics and soundproofing necessary for instruments and the latest technology. The auditorium, which is attached to the music room, will have a raised stage, proper amplification, and lighting for all types of performances.
One of the signature pieces in this building will be the full-size gymnasium, which will be large enough to accommodate 2 classrooms at a time during the school day. The gymnasium will also be used by the community for league games of all types. This is the upper lobby and what you would see at the top of the stairway. On your left is the library and STEM area with direct access to the art room. Check out the natural wood beams and the height of the ceiling. I personally like that the balcony railing is see-through to make the area look larger.
This building project represents an opportunity to provide the children of Gloucester with a state-of-the-art facility. Located in the center of the city, this building will be a source of inspiration and pride for generations to come. Don't forget to vote on November 3rd on question number 3. Right, Mr. Fusco?
That's right, Ms. Pasquarello.
Okay, thank you. Let me just bring up presentation here. So just a reminder to capture things before we wrap up and have Q&A. The benefits for the entire community. So of course, the veterans and East Gloucester students and teachers will have a modern school facility to support all their learning and their teaching needs. And that will work for generations, 50, 60 years, at least. 2/3 of Gloucester, at that point, if we're successful in building this new school, then 2/3 of Gloucester's elementary school students will be in up-to-date, appropriate sized and energy efficient schools. For the first time ever, all veterans and East Gloucester students will have dedicated spaces for physical education, art, music, and a cafeteria. We'll have safer, more secure buildings. It will have traffic patterns for safer drop off and pickup because they'll all be separated. Buses, cars, and pedestrians will be separated, unlike today. And as we mentioned before, additional community benefits. So this community will have access to the gym and performing arts space for community leagues, activities. The city has committed to building new ball fields at Green Street to replace the current field at Mayo's Playground. And we'll have additional open space at the site of East Gloucester School. The open space that's already there will be preserved and then added onto because the East Gloucester School will be taken down. So that is, this is our last community forum. If you want to ask a question or submit a question, I should say, please just look at the Q&A icon on the bottom of your screen. And then you should see a text box where you can submit your questions. We also do have a few questions that were submitted earlier this week to the form that was on the website. So let me see if there are any questions here. We do have a few more folks have joined us, so that's great. Have 21 attendees now, which is excellent. And I have a few questions. 1 second here. Oh, hold on. Okay, here we go. Let me just see these. So is there currently asbestos in either of the buildings, including asbestos flooring? Amy, go ahead.
So I think that came in while I was talking about the basement. There is a sign in the basement that talks about asbestos. That's not referring to the flooring in the basement. It's referring to things that surround pipes and so forth. But we do have asbestos tile in the front hall and the main part of the building. It's fine unless it's disturbed, but if it's disturbed, it becomes a big issue.
Got it. If we don't do this now, what happens to MSBA money? So the MSBA is pretty clear in the documentation and their instructions. if, and as they, actually, I have it right here, I can read it. It says how a failed a failed local vote, sorry, it's a failed local vote for funding, likely will result in the school district being required to submit a new statement of interest to the MSBA and await an invitation from MSBA to enter the eligibility period phase of the MSBA's process. That's the beginning phase. That's what we did in 2016. We, Gloucester submitted a statement of interest to the MSBA. So they are telling us that a failed local vote would likely get us back to the beginning of the line, beginning of the process in their documentation. So the MSBA money, essentially, we are at that point, we have to begin the process to be eligible for that money, again, is what they're telling us. Where will the veteran students be while construction occurs? So, so we'll have to identify swing space for them, what's alternative space, we call it swing space. That means space for them to go to school. When West Parish, for example, when West Parish was built, those students were at St. Anne's, right? And the 5th grade, I believe, was at O'Malley. For any process, for any facility like that, we will run a procurement process that follows state procurement laws. And so there'd have to be an RFP released that identifies the criteria we're looking for that space. And then we would, at the request for folks to, buildings, landowners, property owners, building owners, to respond to that RFP and submit a bid. And then that bid is selected through the city's typical procurement process. Great. As a parent of one of the schools, I know the daily challenges the building creates with size, technology, et cetera. Can you explain what opportunities this new building will allow for both staff and students? Amy's quick on the draw. Fusco, you got to get a little faster on the draw here because she's answering all the questions, okay? Go ahead, Amy.
Matt, you can add to it, I guess. New opportunities are endless. To start with, there'll be breakout rooms, there'll be support rooms for students for small interventions and small group work. The flexible wall between the two classrooms will allow the space to be changed so that we can collaborate together and do projects. The extended learning areas for STEM activities and projects is phenomenal. Another part of the question, students with special needs, they will be out of the hallways. They will be in appropriate, clean, healthy spaces for interventions. They will get the support they need in a confidential space. My school psychologist and adjustment counselor share an office now. So when they are counseling a student, one has to leave, so they will have the privacy to do the work that they need to do. It really is endless, the amount of opportunities that the new building will give.
One of the things just to add in, one of the things I like about the special education spaces is that they're attached right to the grade level classrooms. So the students aren't really being moved down a hallway to the other side of the building, and in some cases at veterans. So it's, they're going to stay, those students, though they'll be getting some extra and specific help, they're going to be with their classmates and have a great connection to the classroom.
The one thing I would add is, if you think about the spaces here, right now, because space is such a premium in both schools, it's this real, very complicated sort of orchestration. If a teacher wants to use the gym, / cafeteria because they need some more space, or if they want to use, at Matt's at veterans, the music space, for example. Of course, there is no art space, right? And so, but at the new school, you'd have, a stage folks could use if they're working on some, dramatic performance. They have the extended learning spaces where they can collaborate with another classroom, which is right now only really one space in each of the schools. Can you do that? And that's taken up with gym and the cafeteria, right? There's the collaboration spaces. So there's the media center, which is, a full-blown media center, as opposed to, the small libraries we kind of have now, which really are classrooms in one sense, okay? So, you think about the flexibility of those spaces, the opportunity it gives for teachers and students to spread out and do more with more. It just really, as Amy was saying, it creates possibilities that at this point schools can't even consider because they're so hampered by the space. What does it mean to be chosen in the MSBA process? Does this mean that our buildings are some of the worst in the state? I know, Amy, you want to answer
I
that?
want to talk again. I hate to say that we're one of the worst in the state because we have one of the best, both Matt and I have some of the best faculty and staff that I've ever worked with. But our building was one of the worst. It was the top 17 worst buildings in the state that applied that year. When they came to look at my school, their comment was, we want to see the river. We want to see if it's there. And they did see the running water, the stream in the basement. Yes, it means we were one of the worst.
And I want to just also talk a bit more about this. Because there's been a lot of concern raised about why aren't our buildings, better kept up. And a couple things. Remember, with East Gloucester, we're talking about a building that's more than 70 years old, and with veterans, it's a building a lot younger at 60+ years old. These buildings, especially with the use they get, have a lifespan. The other piece is for the last 10 years and a little bit less than that, really. These buildings have been kept up very well by the Department of Public Works staff. Since the city made the smart decision to separate out from the school budget the building budgets and the maintenance budgets, and have that taken over by Department of Public Works, been a much better system, organization, staffing, and upkeep of these buildings. So, whereas maybe in the past, a while ago, there was some concern about that because we were making choices between repairs and upkeep versus teachers. The way the city has it organized now is much better, much more effective. And really, those are older stories about the lack of upkeep. The principals are really pleased with how quickly the DPW responds, how fast they get on it, the quality of the work. So those are really sort of old history about that upkeep, and Gloucester's doing a much better job now. With all the water in the East Gloucester basement, is there an issue with mold or air quality?
Do you want me to answer that?
Yeah.
We have dehumidifiers in some rooms. We do clean for mold if it ever pops up. We do the very best we can for air quality. The entire building was tested this year because of COVID. And we did pass our air quality testing, but it is a wet environment.
Mm-hmm.
It's an old building.
This is for Michelle. Could you please explain your statement at a building committee where this person says, you said, quote, you don't want to go there when asked about saving thousands of dollars for an artificial turf area. Michelle, I don't know if you remember saying anything like that. I don't, or if you did. Could we speak about the artificial turf and why communities choose that way for schools and for other playing fields?
Absolutely. I'm not sure if I said that, but I'd be happy to talk about that. One of the reasons why we are choosing turf for this field is the durability and the maintenance issues. To save thousands of dollars up front means that you're going to be putting a lot of that money into maintaining this field. You're going to have a lot of children playing on this field, and you want to make sure that it's available for them throughout the year. So turf fields drain better, they're more functional, they're easier to maintain. So that would be one of our first things. When we're looking for saving monies, we don't want to put it where the kids are going to actually be using these spaces.
So another thing, just in terms of my recent experience on this, when I was in another district, they would only be able to access their field outside their school for part of the year because of rain, overuse. Because of how much use there was, they just couldn't keep grass on it. And then whenever it rained, it'd essentially become quite muddy, and that would then damage it more. and there was a lot of debate within the community about going for turf or not. They did choose to go to turf. And what folks immediately started experiencing was that was a field that was open every day of the school year and beyond, obviously, and whether it was wet or whether it was snowing, or no matter what the conditions were out there, kids could get out and run around, be on open space. And so that's a big plus. It is a difficult choice for communities. There's trade-offs, but certainly maintenance is simpler, and also use is greatly improved with turf, and that's some of the reasons that folks opt for it.
Absolutely correct. It could be raining in the morning and you'd have the field available for gym and recess in the afternoon without any puddling.
Do you know if the roof is currently leaking at St. Anne's? I do not know if it is, but they should fix that if it is. I've heard that drop-off, pickup, and parking at EGS are an issue. Can you please explain how that will work at the new school and improvement to parking? Amy, could you just first talk about just this is about EGS. Could you talk about how to pick up and drop off work or / don't work EGS with, got buses, cars, pedestrians, walkers. How explain what that's like, seeing as you're also acting as part-time crossing guard these days.
I am. It's almost full-time crossing guard. So the buses come into the circle. They are not able to go all around the circle in front of East Gloucester to turn around in one turn. They have to go forward, stop, and back up, and then come back around like a 3-point turn to make it around this circle. Because the buses take up so much space in that circle, we do not allow cars in during pickup or drop off. So cars drop off, their parents drop their students off at the corner of Chapel and Davis Street Extension, and the students walk down Davis Street Extension. We have it staffed very nicely with a lot of staff members because with the buses having to do a 3-point turn to turn around, there's a worry of kids walking down and a bus backing up. It's a safety issue. So that's a significant issue. As far as the parking goes, I have 28 spaces on site. I have 48 staff members. So if you do the math, we do not have enough space for everyone to park at the building. We double park, we park park in the middle of the side parking lot. Some teachers need to leave keys in the main office in case their car has to be moved while they're teaching for someone to leave the building. I have staff members that park 3 blocks away. Pickup and drop off is an issue. Parking is an issue. All of this will be improved by the new building, which has
Amy, I'm gonna have Matt answer that question just to, to have you take a rest there.
he needs to talk a little.
He'll keep going if I don't stop her. So I also want to just add that Veterans does have its challenges as well with pickup and drop off with the way the building is set up. There's really just a very small area in the front that the bus has to do a 3-point turn out in the middle of Webster Street in order to back itself in. And of course, parking's limited basically to just on-street parking. And luckily the fraternity club is kind enough to let us use their parking lot for people to come in. But what we're really excited about is that there's going to be a separate entrance for the buses, and then another entrance for automobiles, people dropping their children off. And it's going to extend, at dismissal, when it's more of a sort of everyone comes at the same time at dismissal to pick their child up. It will extend out behind the back area, the back playground, and go around. So we'll be able to get a large amount of cars off the street and onto the property. So that's going to ease a lot of the congestion. We have a lot of congestion now on Webster Street at dismissal and arrival. And then arrival will, it is more sort of drawn out because we open a lot earlier than when school is in session. So that's a little more spread out, but same thing. The parents will be able to drive around. I can tell you right now that Ms. Pasquarello and I have plans to get lots of people to take the bus to school, because we will have that nice drop-off area and a place that can hold a lot of buses coming in. So we'll be working with families to try and get as many people to take the bus, so that can even ease it out even more.
And there are a few principles there that are really important that our schools don't have right now. Is one, have separate drop-offs for the buses versus cars and separate access for pedestrians. Because separating those three are super important in terms of safety. Drop-off and pickup are actually two of the more dangerous times for any school, especially when it's not well organized like it will be in the new school. Currently, as Amy was describing, there isn't space, there aren't paths, there aren't routes for it to be well organized and safe at East Gloucester. And that's actually quite scary, as those buses, which at this point are too big for what the school was originally built for, as they're backing up, that's a dangerous time for pedestrians, for other cars, that sort of stuff. So, and then the other piece is another principle that we're seeing in the design is just the idea of getting that traffic off the streets. So not having it on the city streets where you're blocking traffic and also making dangerous conditions. And certainly, even better than West Parish, the process at the new building will be orderly, it'll be organized, and most importantly, it'll be slow. The cars will not be able to move quickly around the back and the playground area, and that of course makes it safe as well. So really important changes that improve the safety of the school, and the pickup and drop off is just one of them. So a question from Beeman School with over 20 acres of land was the winner to be built upon if the Pines did not work out. Why did the committee pick veterans with only 6.25 acres? Could a school committee member answer that? Maybe Jonathan or Kathy?
Sure. First of all, Beeman was not considered for a site for the East Gloucester School or veterans because of where it is. We wanted to have a school that's within the catchment areas of one of those schools. So that was a factor of why Beeman was not considered. The
Great.
Pines was considered, but it was determined that the access, because the actual buildable part of that piece of land is access from the back shore, that it's a series of very small roads, and there's no sewer or, well, there's sewer, but it's not adequate sewer to handle a school, and electricity and et cetera. So utilities would be a big issue there. And very few kids would live in the neighborhood. Veterans was ultimately picked because it is currently the site of a school. The bulk of the kids that go to Veterans are within walking distance. And ultimately, more than 50% of the students that go to East Gloucester live closer to the Veterans site. So those were some of the major considerations. The fact that it has access to sewer and water, and utilities, of course, is another factor.
Great. Thank you, Jonathan.
Maybe Kathy wants to add to that. She was there.
Kathy, all set, or? I think we're all set.
I'm all set. I don't have anything to add to that.
Great, thank you both. Could some, Michelle, this might be for you, comment on how modern turf might be different from old school turf? So some of us think of like the original Astro turf, which was, hard, very abrasive, and kind of like as soft as concrete. Can you help us understand how modern turf is different and different for kids and their experience?
Sure. So to start with your first point is, some of us think of the AstroTurf as being what you're putting here. This is not the kind of stuff that you put on your back patio to make it look like it's grass. This is engineered specifically for sports play or for playground children. So the whole engineering behind and science behind turf fields has advanced considerably over the last few years. Additionally, we sometimes think of the turf as being or we send our kids out to play and they come back with these cleats full of black stuff. That's not what we're looking at any longer either. The drainage systems for these turf fields has just increased incredibly over the last few years. The stormwater management, so they're actually draining very well. Again, going back to the fact that we can use them year round because they drain so well. They're just not the same product that we're used to thinking of back then.
So that includes, I think softer blades, taller blades.
Yes.
I think it also includes, material that cools better and doesn't retain heat as much, things like that, right?
Exactly, yes.
Great,
And
great.
what we choose for this playground will be designed for the kinds of activities that will be on this playground.
Excellent. And then you mentioned about the stormwater. This next question is a good follow-up. The pond, which was the name from Meadows Field before it became a ball field, is still a very wet area. What are you going to do to remedy this situation in the new areas?
Right, so you just heard me speak about some stormwater management. There is none currently, except for slope and drainage, surface slope and drainage on the existing site. We'll be installing stormwater management. We'll be correcting a lot of the slope and drainage so that it all grades away from playgrounds and buildings. We'll be raising areas so that we can create those slopes that, to help manage that water, and it will be flowing into drainage systems and then through bioretention areas.
Great. Thank you, Michelle. Second here. Can you describe the benefits of the updated technology that staff and students would have available to them, and how that would compare to the present availability of technology now at vets in East Gloucester? Matt, do you want to start with that?
Sure. If anything, if COVID's taught us anything, it's the need for teachers to have the ability to work and be technologically advanced. So we're very excited about some of the updated technologies that we're going to be looking at. We haven't gotten to that point where we're going to be choosing new systems, but smart boards, latest computer technology, just the wiring, faster speeds, all of that will be available to teachers that they don't really have right now at their schools. I know that Grant is on this call as well, so not through lack of his great work, but there are, just because the buildings are old, he battles against infrastructure issues just on a daily basis.
The building will also be designed to have better acoustics and lighting, and that adds to the technology and the ability to utilize it. Just the soundproofing and the way things are built, it'll be better. It'll be more conducive to teaching.
Yep. One thing which isn't really technology, but in a sense it is more daylight. And there have been plenty of studies that have shown that more natural light is actually, and that's sort of the space that comes with it, is actually helps kids learn quite a bit and do better in their academics and studies and their success in school. We know that traffic is, I just want to see if we've already answered this. We know that traffic is very dangerous and congested in the Webster Street, Eastern Avenue area. And we know that the neighbors in this area are concerned. What is your answer to these neighbors, and what should they do for their neighborhood?
So if I could answer that, right now, there's no off-street parking for people picking their children up at the end of the school day or in the morning. There's a small, I think it holds 10, maybe 15 cars up at the top of Webster Street. But other than that, there's no room for parents to park their cars on the vet's property because it's filled with faculty and staff. So The new plan is going to be taking all those cars will have an ability to get off of the street, to, to travel around the property itself and off the street. So what they have now is there's no off-street parking really. I mean, unless they use the fraternity club, or sometimes the Masonic Hall out on Eastern Ave, which has people crossing Eastern Ave, which isn't great. So I would say it's actually a better situation than what they have right now.
Yeah. And another piece of that is, by getting the cars that are dropping off or picking up off of the city streets, off of Eastern Avenue, off of Webster Street, that eliminates the double parking and the double, and stopping in the middle of traffic.
Yes.
Cars stopping in the middle of traffic to let kids out or pick kids up. And that improves the flow. You'll have a better flow, even though there will be more cars. You'll have a better flow because those cars aren't on there. And then also getting the cars off the street, as Matt already said this, in terms of parking, then opens up more parking for the neighborhood folks. So it seems counterintuitive, but because buildings these days, including this one, are better planned and better designed in order to minimize impact on the neighborhoods in terms of traffic and vehicle flow, unlike the way that we're experiencing Veterans and East Gloucester right now, is it's counterintuitive, but it actually will work much better than it does now. Be more systematic, be more orderly, be safer, and also be off the city streets. There's been conflicting information about the MSBA process. If that exclusion does not pass, what would be the shortest amount of time that Gloucester could get approved again for another project? There aren't definite pieces here, but as I read before, the MSBA tells us in their written documentation that we would have to likely submit another statement of interest. That would be going back to 2016. That's a competitive process, which means that, we may or may not be approved or enter into that accepted into working with them. The first year, it could take 1, 2, 3 years. Even if we were accepted into that, by their timelines, that means we're delayed at least another 4 years minimum, best case scenario, and it could take quite a bit longer than that. So that's what they tell us based on their documentation, and also going on how long this process has taken us already. So you're looking at, minimum a 5-year delay, I think it is, if I'm counting right, and maximum we have no way of telling, because it all depends on when we're adopted into the process, if we have to restart it.
Yeah, Ben, I'd like to just chime in a little bit. Yeah, we've had some conversation with the MSBA, and I think, they do have guidelines for, if a vote would fail, but also too, their goal is to help fund schools in the communities and help the communities succeed. So, there's a requirement if in fact there would be a failed vote, that they're asking for the community to provide a plan, and within 10 days, just to have a general plan of what the intention would be. And it could be as simple as we're developing a plan to look at different financing options or whatever, that could be reported back in 20 days or whatever time would be the committee would determine would be acceptable. Again, they're trying to help communities succeed. So whatever the community decides to do, they would support them. We just need to communicate with the MSBA. So it's not an automatic go to the end of the line, but we've got to have a game plan as to how that might be accomplished. So we're hoping that won't happen, but if it does, the MSBA will work with us to keep the funding in place for as long as possible to get the community support, because they realize the costs are going up and it's more expensive to do projects down the road. So anyway, John?
Yeah, just one other comment on that. If we decide not to move forward though, that becomes a problem.
Yes.
And we go back to the end of the line, and as Ben has, suggested, we have to, submit another, statement of interest, and we're back in the queue. And who knows what happens at that point.
Right.
Yep.
And if I could add, the whole basis for having the debt exclusion is because financing a project of this size is not within the scope of the city's capacity to take on that kind of debt service. And we would be rejecting a reimbursement grant from MSBA for around $27 million on a $66.7 million project.
Thank you, folks. Okay, so a few more questions here. If East Gloucester was built so many years ago, so this might be for the architects or designers or construction folks. If East Gloucester was built so many years ago, why wasn't electrical boxes changed to circuit breakers? Why wasn't asbestos been removed? What wasn't water problems in basement addressed? Sorry, why wasn't the sump pumps and why weren't furnaces replaced and basement floors cemented? Why weren't they taken care of?
I think the only answer to that ultimately is the cost associated with having to do that, on an ongoing basis. I think that the building's been maintained, right? But it's very expensive, right, to go and replace all of that stuff. And ultimately, that's a decision that has to be made that you have to address every year with a school budget and with a maintenance budget. And it's hard to accomplish those, particularly when you're looking at the number of schools that you have to address. And a lot of those schools, which have similar conditions, both to what you're experiencing in East Gloucester and what you're experiencing at Vets.
Okay, thank you, Brad. Michelle, the question is, could Michelle go over this traffic study they did? Please don't go over the whole traffic study. I'm sure it's dozens and dozens, if not hundreds of pages. But can you maybe highlight a few of the conclusions of the traffic study that was, I imagine, done at either East Gloucester and or veterans?
Sure. I'm not sure if there's a specific question there or something that I'm being asked to focus on.
The question just says, could Michelle go over the traffic study they did? That's all it says. So if you want to identify a few.
Sure, and I believe that the traffic study has been posted as well as the video or the information or presentation that was given by our traffic engineers. I believe all of that is on the website and can be linked to it. The traffic study is that, so the basis that we used was that we were increasing the population of the school. So we used that as a basis for looking at the number of cars coming in and out of the building, out of the site within the hour between pickup and drop off, for the hour before school for pickup, for drop off, and the hour after for pickup. And we matched that with the number of cars that we think will be dropping students off. We came up with a queue line of about 80 cars that move within, I think it was 7 minutes. Don't quote me on that. That's all in the report. But it's a continuous flow in the morning. So cars are arriving to the site and dropping off and leaving. The morning drop off is extended. The number of cars are the same as the afternoon pickup, but the drop off timeline is extended because you have a morning breakfast program and students will arrive earlier. And so that is why the morning loop is smaller. Cars are continuously coming and leaving the site very quickly. In the afternoon, you have cars that queue up for picking up students, and most students are leaving at approximately the same time. There is an after school program, but most students are leaving right at the end of the school day. So we allowed for cars to be queued, and that's why we extended that loop, so that if you do get a situation where you have cars queuing up much earlier, you can have that loop extended. Again, once the start of pickup starts, kids get in the car and the cars leave the site. And so it becomes a very quick process. I think Matt said that your process right now is about 15 minutes, but that means that parents are parking their car, walking to the school, picking up their students and walking back. And that's why you have so much congestion right now. You have parents getting out of the cars and a lot of students walking. This is going to be a more fluid pickup and drop off process. I'm not sure if that's addressing the question, but I'd be happy to point you to
That's helpful, Michelle. Thank you very much. We'll move on. Just a couple more questions and then we'll wrap up because we're we're supposed to go to 8:45, and so just have a couple more questions. How is there a new parking plan? No, is there a new parking, sorry, is there a new parking plan? GFC and the Masonic lots, are we paying for this?
I
Matt, are we
think
paying for?
maybe I was misunderstood. That's what people use now, just for the few moments that they have to pick their children up, because there's on the on-street parking, there's not a lot. So obviously we would have people getting off the streets and going through the queue at arrival and dismissal. So we wouldn't, there isn't like they're not part of any new parking plan.
Great. Thank you, Matt, for clarifying that. How many firms gave bids for rebuilding the schools? So that in terms of the selection process, the not designer, the construction manager selection process,
Right.
folks just say when that happened and how many proposals there were?
Right. The qualification-based selection process for this construction manager risk delivery method occurred during the months of March and April. We ended up with 3 firms submitting their proposals, and all firms were interviewed, and the selection process was completed based upon their submission and their interviews. So.
Great. And Tom, just to make sure everyone knows, that's a process that's defined by the MSBA. We follow their rules. It also has to be in accordance with the city's procurement process as well,
Right.
correct?
Right, and the Construction Reform Law of 2004 stipulates the cement risk delivery method and the process for selecting. So there's a selection committee evaluation, and it's there's components for quality, experience, price, everything. So
Great, thank you. Yep, and that's the same process that any community that works at MSBA must follow, correct?
correct.
Great.
If the question is about rehabbing the schools, that was a process that we did as an exercise early on, and it was required to be done. And I believe the estimates that we've been using, and Brad or Michelle or Tom could weigh in on this, were done by their firms, by the outside estimators. There were never any bid documents, so they weren't
Right.
It was never put out to bid.
Correct.
Yeah, it's hard to understand this question. I assume, seeing as we're talking about rebuilding a school, that I assume that's what we must be asking about, not
Right.
something else. So, but hard to tell. And then the last one tonight is, will there be an area for backyard growers program at the new school? Amy is shaking her head vigorously. Yes. Do you want to add to that? And Matt as well. So yes, the answer for that is yes, definitely. Everyone's shaking their hands. Yes.
I believe, Michelle, in the parking area, there was a grass area for backyard growers specifically.
We've planned areas for backyard growers specifically, very similar to what we did for West Parish, where you have the grow boxes. We want to make sure that's still a part of your program.
Great. Excellent. Well, thank you so that's all for tonight. Want to thank everyone for participating. We had about, I think, 20 people on max tonight, maybe a couple more, maybe 22, which puts us, I think, in second place in terms of the 3 different forums we had. The middle one, we had 5:30, 6:30, and 7:30. 6:30 looks like the winner. But thanks for everyone for joining us tonight. Thanks for those. Some folks have been here every night. Appreciate your time. And all this information, whether it's the presentations, the forums, recordings of the last 2 forums are on our website. Just click on that big link of the picture of the school on our homepage, and all sorts of other documents are there too, in terms of the video, Q&A, presentations from previous meetings. Just about anything you like is on there. Please remember to vote on November 3rd. And thanks, everyone. Thank you to the panelists. Thank you to the audience participants, and have a great night.
Thank you. Good
Bye.
night.